people they think that it's not going to happen with me, but it does, right? Someone gets injured.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another recording of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm Jordan Scott. I'm here with Brianna Ludwig. We're in middle March, late March, and we're getting ready for another baseball season on the major leagues. And then a few weeks later, all of the other professional leagues will be starting. So it's not just the 30 major league teams, it's close to 200 teams that are playing in other leagues. Same game, baseball. But what we want to talk about is how foul ball safety now started. So I usually like to talk about that for a minute. Foul ball safety now started back in 2019. I was watching some morning news and I saw something very disturbing. As a baseball fan, I saw something that was incorrect and I knew there was a situation that needed to be addressed. And I started out making some bold statements and comments and some gestures to some teams, and maybe they thought I would go away, but I've been doing it now for 7 years. I've been with Brendan. He's an investigative reporter, and we've interviewed more than 80 people, people that have been unfortunately affected by the ball, and also the baseball players themselves. Brendan and I reached out to many guys, and we've interviewed about 30 guys. And they were very interesting because they decided that they wanted to talk about this issue, which was never addressed while they were playing. So that was very cool. We've also been to court. I've been to court in Illinois for more than a year. I've rented out some airplanes because I thought it was an opportunity for a promotion to bring attention to one of these airplanes carrying one of these signs. Like sometimes you see the corporate sponsors over the beaches when they're sponsoring drinks or suntan lotion or whatever. And we did that 5 times. I rented out a couple of guys to walk around a ballpark in Colorado during the All-Star game. There's a lot people should see at Foul Ball Safety now, learn what Brianna and I have been doing for the last year and a half together, learn what Brendan and I have been accumulating over the last 7 years, and people need to know everything that we're discovering because it's worthy of all of our time. We're all affected by this. People, unfortunately, every year will be in the less than 1% injured club, and that's no good. There's not a million people who've had life altering experiences, but there have been thousands. And every year there'll be new additions, and that's long overdue, needs to be addressed, needs to be stopped. We can create a great ecosystem inside and outside the ballpark so everyone knows that there's no conditions, no strings attached. Come to the game, park the car, not worry about a ball coming out, go inside, have a great time with your children, know where you can get up and go get a snack, and not worry about being hit unexpectedly. We can do it. It's not rocket science. It's really just a matter of committed to the discussion, and we know technology and commitment to conversation do it. There's billions of dollars out there. Get it done. We're learning so much more about colleges, and that's going to be coming up in the next few weeks. I've been at this now for 7 years. For 6 years, I was only concentrating on professional baseball, but there's so many more baseball players in the NCAA than there are in all of professional baseball, and a student athlete contacted me from Queens College about a year ago and was under stress because he said they were worried because an elementary school was on campus and their balls that were going over the side could hit the kids, and I was like, "That's legitimate," and I've been at it, writing letters to the Queens College. On letter number 4, I even got an article in the Queens College newspaper, and, now the NCAA knows that we're curious why they haven't addressed compromised, safety situations that are happening everywhere in America. I'll keep on putting this in front of everyone and let everyone see for themselves, and we're excited to bring on our guest. Brianna, how are you today?
Doing great, Jordan. Excited to dive into this conversation. So, without further ado, I'd love to invite on our guest host for the day. He is an aspiring actor and cybersecurity engineer based out of Dallas. Neil Kamal, welcome.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you, Jordan.
We're excited to talk with you. Are you ready to lead a discussion with us?
Oh, yeah, I'm
All
ready.
right. Take it away, Neil.
So, Jordan, you were mentioning that you have been following it up since 2019, and we have not heard back from any organization about these safety nets or safety precautions. So, what I wanted to know, has there been any third party research being done, or has someone done any research on what might be causing the injury? Are there any regulation lapses, or there are any regulation that we can create or make some safety rules?
Sure, that's a great question. As far as I know, there's no regulation. So clearly, outside agencies have not stepped in where they should have many years ago. And I would hope that once they collect our information and ready to have an honest exchange with us, Brendan and I can create an impetus for those agencies to make change ASAP because the status quo, Neil, is not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. And we have to create an ecosystem inside and outside professional ballparks. Now I'm hearing maybe colleges are worse. We need to address each professional playing field and figure out a plan. People can say who are involved, administrators, coaches, managers, they're involved, they're too close. And there's an expression, somebody needs to look at it from a 30,000-foot view. We've been looking at it from a 30,000-foot view with a magnifying glass, Neil. So we see it very clearly, and we want people to be committed for solutions because they're available.
That sounds great. Jordan, my next question would be, so if agencies have not come forward, can we go to those agencies and knock some doors, or have we approached some and we have been denied?
Also, great question. There were two senators a couple of years ago who stepped in for a few minutes. That was Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth from Illinois. And they were presented information by MLB that they were going to provide more for the senators. And as far as we know, the senators either did not follow up or maybe they did, but MLB did not deliver what they were supposed to do. And that was a number of years ago during my 7-year campaign. And unfortunately, right now, we know that the only people talking about this is the three of us today. Will there be another agency that meets up with all of our information as you have and other very interesting guests have? We certainly hope so, because again, it's worthy of all of our time.
And I feel, Jordan, we should follow up back with those senators. Maybe they still have some interest. Maybe we can provide some data that can pique some interest, and they can think that, hey, these are my constituents. They are getting hurt,
Right,
right?
right.
So I think our action item should be that at least we don't leave anything from our side for any assumptions. We would like to follow it up and make sure a logical end is met.
This would be great if there was some kind of senator sponsoring particular bill. I think the expression or the term is act of Congress, where
Mhm.
now it's law, or abolish the baseball rule. So that would force all of the professional establishments and the NCAA, which is probably under the same, if you get hurt at the game, you've taken the assumption of risk. We need to know that all of these establishments, professional NCAA games, all have oversight, all have regulatory agencies working together to make sure that they create the proper community for both the players and the fans. And think about it for a minute, it's not just the fans who may be affected, it's the younger players who are maybe psychologically scarred and not living the best life they can. Brendan and I have interviewed 30 guys, but most of them have been out of the game for a while, Neil. But lately, in the last 2 months, I've probably had 40 conversations with guys on the telephone. I've had two small conferences where they brought their friends and players together for a meeting. And that's always very interesting because it's a safe place for them to open up. Brendan and I are not recording them. This is more of a, hey, come, tell us how you really been feeling. And if people go to my website, new baseball statistic, present traumatic stress disorder, I'm starting to add some of these things I'm hearing to that particular tab. People can hear things like, every time I swing the bat, I have anxiety. Every time I played when there was kids' night, my feelings would spike and I'd be extra nervous. I would purposely hit the ball to not strike out, knowing my deflections would potentially hurt somebody. He also acknowledged hurting somebody. How crazy is that? Going to work, knowing that you're purposely hitting the ball in certain areas, knowing that you could hurt somebody. He knew this prior, and he's still performing because it's such a strong feeling of trying to be a major leaguer. He was very clear with me what he had done, but that was past tense. I'm dealing with players in the present tense about every time I swing the bat, I have anxiety. Last year, I played in Europe, and I was playing in front of 3,000 people, and there was no netting even above the dugout. I'm putting these things in there so people can see present traumatic stress disorder. And other players are feeling things, and we wanna just let everyone know what we're seeing. So it's not only just for the fans, but it's also for the players.
What I gather is that you have redefined PTSD. That's good.
Okay.
And that makes sense. Yeah,
Okay.
that really makes sense. It's not past, it's present.
Right.
You mentioned about some governing agencies that are responsible or not responsible for the safety regulation. What was that?
Well, no, there's certain agencies for
Uh-huh.
sure. There's
Uh-huh.
OSHA. OSHA should be looking out for the teenagers that work at these baseball games. They're
Uh-huh.
looking out for the workers. So why are 15-year-old and 16-year-olds at their first job walking around selling food when they could be slammed with a ball as a baby was in a situation that Brendan and I learned about, getting
Uh-huh.
contacted by a lawyer? Bats fly
Yeah.
over into seats. And we know there's children's agencies out there, they're supposed to be looking out for the welfare of the child. They should
Yeah.
make this sport 21
Yeah.
and older in certain places and say, no way, no how, no more parents are going to unexpectedly be surprised and have a disruption that no family ever would want. And we're going to prevent that from ever happening again. That could happen, but they have to get committed to the conversation. There are thousands of people in the less than 1% club that have had life altering injuries. We know of at least 45 children since 2008 that have experienced mostly head injuries and mostly accounted for at MLB games. But we know since there's less media and there's 5 times as many more games in all of these other ballparks, well, maybe it's not 5 times higher, but maybe it's 3 times higher of how many recorded injuries we just haven't found yet. And Brianna's finding all of these self-reported injuries in 2025 at Major League Baseball games. We found people making TikTok videos, Neil, of their black and blue marks. We found at least 45 people that have self-reported their black and blue marks on TikTok, and some of them said they're never going to another game again, and that could have been a child or a baby, and a life-altering experience, which is what Brendan and I have been exposed to. We can get
Yeah.
deeper into the details on the
Mhm.
extents of these injuries, as I was referring to the baby a few seconds ago, and other children who are now adults who we've interviewed, people who've
Yeah.
been blinded.
Yeah. Jordan, so what is the take of MLB on this? Have we
Mm.
spoken to them or these
Well,
questions?
yeah, I mean, we've reached out to them on some occasions. We just put out you can see on the website at Foul Ball Safety Now, there was some controversy with the old guy, he's out, and the new guy is in, but either way, it's the same structure. The MLB Players Union not only represents the 30 major league team players, but in the last couple of years, they have 120. They're like 4 times as large when it comes to membership because now the younger guys coming up, they also are part of the MLB Players Union. And I hold them just as accountable, Neil. I didn't mean to not answer your question, but MLB Players Union negotiates with MLB. And supposedly, Neil, 3 times over the last 15 years, the MLB Players Union has brought up the topic. But why wouldn't the MLB Players Union say, "We insist, and we're not gonna go any further with the negotiations," because they're the ones who are actually hitting the ball, so they could say something, put a very strong emphasis that, "No, we're not gonna hit balls at kids anymore. We're gonna put our heads together. We're gonna hire the right architects, engineers, and designers, and create a safe ecosystem for everyone inside and outside, and it's gonna be a democratized scenario and not a democratized process." So I kinda like when you say reach out to MLB, I'm reaching out to the players union now. We didn't really get far with the MLB a few years back. Sure, you can go back to them, Neil, but I don't
No, no, no.
have any influence.
S-
It's just the
s-
3 of us talking right now. But we
yeah.
really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. And what is the biggest pushback they have shown? Why MLB would not like to listen to the safety of their.
Well, that's a great question, and they don't wanna make it like they knew 55 years ago that potentially a 14-year-old boy, he got hit at Dodger Stadium, and he died a few days later. And then my friend, I'll call her a friend, my lawyer, Lynn, she's been in my life for 5, 6 years, 7 years, she introduced me to her girlfriend. And her girlfriend, who was 14 years old at the time, she was very kind. She was blinded at Shea Stadium in New York. And Lynn introduced me to her girlfriend and said, "Would you like to meet my friend who was blinded in New York?" "Yes, of course." So she's one of our 80 interviews. And she was very kind to revisit that situation with us. What do you tell those people from 1979? All of a sudden, nets go up. Did you not know then? I don't think they wanna have that discussion because we can easily help people retrace their steps. People, please look at Exhibit A1, which is a published report in 2019, and Brendan and I incorporated our own research in 2025. It demonstrates where the balls go and what direction. You may see a section where it's close to 50% of the balls are going. You're gonna realize, Neil, that certainly before that year, before maybe any nets had gone up, that you were sitting there all those years where those people unfortunately got hit, like my lawyer's friend, and where that kid got hit in Dodger Stadium and died a few days later. You'd be like, "Well, why were we sitting there? Why did it take like 45 years from 1970 to 2015, 2016 before the Nets went over the dugout?" And then in 2019, you can almost retrace your steps and see, "Oh, that section, I just saw that 5-minute horrific video Jordan calls Exhibit A, produced by ESPN." And then you switch over to Exhibit A1, you'll see, "Oh, we sat in that section in 2017, 2018." Yes, you did, and you sat there 8 times with your family over 2 years? You're gonna be really upset because you're gonna be like, "Wait, did they know these balls were traveling at this speed prior to 2019?" Of course they did, it's there. You can retrace your steps. It's a head scratcher why business as usual was that then, and it still is now. I went to court in Illinois. They didn't have netting above the dugout in Peoria, Illinois, and affiliated of the St. Louis Cardinals up until the beginning of the 2025 season. So obviously, more exposure is more chances. That's what I'm saying, Neil. And again, we don't have to break it down right now, but any baseball fan that follows the game like me gets it just like I'm explaining it.
No, just it's difficult that they've waited so long to address the issue even. So were they to suddenly make massive strides and put up all this netting, etc., they would then owe their fans an explanation as to why so much was changing at all of their ballparks and stadiums. And they may have to reveal the data of the injuries and fatalities, the extent of the injuries. And most of the fan base would probably be wondering why they weren't properly protected or informed earlier.
My next question would be, have we done any signature campaign to have this foul ball safety being made compulsory to the teams or the MLB?
Y- Definitely would love to meet a team of people that will adopt the matter and bring it to the citizens, no doubt. What I had done 2 weeks ago in Arizona, Neil, I'm not sure if I shared this with you on the first call, but it's an opportunity. I spent less than $1,000 on what I call the Shohei Ohtani cutout. Shohei Ohtani is a world famous baseball player, and the Dodgers, they play their spring games in Glendale, Arizona. So what we did was we set up this life-size cutout of Shohei Ohtani in an outdoor mall, and it showed Shohei Ohtani in a vulnerable position, Neil. It showed him holding his hand over his head because he hit a line drive, probably 100 miles an hour, and he thought he struck a human being. For a second, how we would all react if one of us thought we hit somebody with our car or we accidentally knocked into a lady and she fell, whatever it may be, right? We'd be, "Hey, I'm sorry," an accident, whatever. But these aren't accidents, Neil. You may look up the definition. This is not an accident. This is an incident because it's predictable. It's predictable. Sometimes people call it an accident, but it's really an incident. 'Cause it's not a matter of if, Neil, it's when. It's when. So we got this I checked it out with my lawyer, Neil, and we felt like the images that we were using were acceptable, and it was terrific. So when you asked about the signature petition, I may have a couple of Shohei Ohtanis on the road this year, this spring even, because people approach and they stop, right? It's like they wanna see, they wanna know what this is about, and they can go to my website and they can meet a representative. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yep. Yep. And I feel that it's more of awareness first. The more aware we make to the people, to the spectators, I think it will gain more momentum and it will have some more teeth, and people will press for, hey, we need some safety regulations. So that's good. And one more thing that I
Sure,
wanted
of
to add
course.
is, I mean, I know players at the back of the mind, they might have this guilt, hey, I might hit someone.
Sure.
When I used to play, I also used to play with this thought, thinking in my mind, am I going to injure someone?
Right.
So, have we tried approaching some advocates among the players saying that, hey, you are one of the faces of baseball,
Sure.
and do you champion our cause? Do you feel that your spectators should be safer enough to enjoy the game? Because I'm going to share one near experience.
And
So
please.
I was watching the game
Uh-huh.
in Huntington Park, Columbus, and I was enjoying. Weather was nice. I was having some drinks and refreshments. Everything was going nice, and then somebody said, "Hey, watch out for the ball." And
Uh-huh.
within a second, it changed. I tried to save myself, spilled the drink. food was on the floor. And I lost the peace of the mind. Though nothing happened, the drink was not a hot drink, thank God. But I lost the peace of the mind. I was not enjoying the game. Yeah, I mean, there is on the back of the mind, there is always the thought that am I getting injured? But how much people take
Yes.
it seriously, that we have to make it
Yes.
aware. Since it has not happened with most of the people, they think that it's not going to happen with me. But it does, right? Someone
Right.
gets injured. So I think we might try approaching some of our prominent names, maybe some of the players who have already been involved in such incidents or may
Of
have a narrow
course.
escape.
Of
They
course.
might have some soft corner for our cause.
Yep.
They
Terrific.
might help us in gaining the momentum or spreading the awareness. Or they might even tell us why the organizations are averse to any safety regulations. Is it changing the spirit of the game or something else? Because I cannot imagine teams spending millions and millions on players and other stuff and not spending a fraction of it for some safety issues.
Just in the last 2 months, talking to 40 guys who
Mhm,
it's not just very deep down. I believe it's right beneath the surface. And the younger they are, the more they're aware of it. Maybe the older they are, Neil, because they've been playing it for so long, they've given up on the idea.
mhm.
20-year-olds are idealistic and they want to play the game free and clear. And they're talking to me about it. The 30-year-olds are already making millions of dollars. Maybe they were thinking the same thing 10 years earlier, Neil, and they only felt like they had to tell their mother and father to sit in the safest places. But they didn't feel it was their responsibility because they were going up the food chain, Neil. They would just wanted to be major leaguers because you don't make the big cash until you become a major leaguer. So they kept their mouth shut. Are they less of a person for not addressing it? Well, nobody came before them, Neil, to help them pave the way. That's why when young guys speak to me, Neil, and say, "Hey, I want to play the game free and clear, Jordan. You think that'll ever be a reality?" I'm like, "I'm going to try." And if you see, I wrote 5 letters to the Queens College administration, and now I changed the tab on the website, Neil. It says Queens College NCAA investigation because it's only the tip of the iceberg. We've looked at 50 fields from Google Earth, and all of them have some compromised situation where balls are either flying in the parking lot or going into neighboring fields. And some communities are talking about it, but you need the right infrastructure. You need architects, engineers, and designers to come into every city and make it happen. Make it happen. These kids deserve better. They don't need to be part of a community. It shouldn't be that one teammate that feels the burden. It should be the whole team. I would hope the team psychologist would tell him that because if he has to be all by himself, that's terrible. Because there are thousands of people who have had life altering experiences. So maybe there's thousands of players that have had life self-reflection moments where they internalized it all on their own, where the team psychologist would be doing the player and the human being an injustice by not talking to him that day. So I want to go there. I want to go to all these places because these victims that I know, they're still waiting for reconciliation, Neil. Thousands of people deserve something. I'll just go back to my lawyer, her friend, who we interviewed, who was blinded in New York. She was telling us a story that when she was a mom, years later, after she's 14, maybe it's 20 years later, she's the mom of an 8-year-old who's playing Little League Baseball. And she was nervous about it. She acknowledged that with the interview that she had with Brendan and I. She acknowledged she was nervous as her 8-year-old was playing Little League Baseball. And her 8-year-old quit baseball, Neil, and he did it probably, in my mind, because his mother was making him feel nervous, and he wanted to please his mom. And maybe that 8-year-old is now 30, and maybe he's saying today to his son or daughter, "You don't wanna play baseball. Look what happened to your grandmother." So there are thousands of families, Neil, who will never have a natural existence of generation to generation to generation, thousands of people. But you know what I'm confident about, Neil, is 99% and more of the people that never got affected by this and never will, once they learn that they could have been one of those thousands, they're gonna empathize and sympathize immediately and say, "That could have been us. That could have been 2 days earlier or 3 days later."
I think we are in the right direction, and
Okay.
we just have to spread the awareness. I would still suggest let's try to get some of the big names. Maybe they have retired, or maybe they
Right.
have made a name. They don't care other agencies to
Right.
recognize them. Not
Right.
not players who are trying to climb the ladder, who have already
Right.
been there, seen that. So
Mhm.
if we approach them, show them the human aspect of it. Hey, these are your fans. They came to
Yeah.
watch you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was that fault for getting a blind eye? Losing a life? I
I
cannot
know.
imagine.
I know. It's still going
Yeah.
on. We're in the dark ages going into
Yeah.
2026, and
Yeah.
there's
And
fires in all theaters inside and outside, and I'm always hopeful that one of our guests will be influential in their field, and
yeah.
they'll adopt the cause, and we'll
Mm,
provide them enough stimulation to give
yeah.
them enough power to make some good noise within their field.
Mhm.
About finding players, Brendan and I have reached out to we've interviewed more than 30 baseball guys, and these guys, more power to them, they were willing to sit down with us and do a formal interview. And these were 30-minute, 45-minute interviews where they reflected on their careers. Some of them were more graphic than others. Some of them were naysayers, but within 15 minutes, they came around too. That's why I feel like if we finally put our commitment to addressing every zip code, then we're going to finally have solutions. It's not such a foreign concept. When we can fly things to deep into outer space, we could certainly knock balls down through technology, through Iron Dome and nets and other things from becoming synonymous with parking lots and broken windows and sometimes broken heads, like in Modesto. Even Brooklyn, New York, when I was with a group of people long before I started, we're standing outside the ballpark, and this young man we're with gets hit right in the forearm. What
Oh my
was
God.
that? But yes, it's predictable. It's not once a year. It could be 20 times in 4 hours. And baseball truth matters, and it's not truthful right now. There's too many people that are gonna be joining the less than 1% club that nobody should be part of. And we're excited that you're part of this with us, and you're contributing and asking great, thoughtful questions, and you may have some other thoughts in the near future. And do you have any other questions for us?
How does liability works out? If a person gets injured, does the team, the stadium, the organization, does any of them pay for their injury or livelihood?
Well, great that you brought that up. So it gives me an opportunity to say that back in 1913, baseball knew that they had some issues, that balls would be hitting people and leaving the field and hitting people and breaking car windows. They knew that in 1913. So they made it very hard. So when those inevitable injuries would come, it would be very hard for you to find an attorney. There's always been something called the assumption of risk. If people Google the baseball rule, you'll have an opportunity to see that this was created over 100 years ago to protect the owners. It's very hard to get an attorney once you get serious damage. And once you do, it's still an uphill climb from there. And most people may give up on it because most states recognize the baseball rule, and attorneys don't want to do 40, 50 hours worth of work and not even get their case heard. So they're like, I'm sorry. It's not like a personal injury lawyer that knows that they're going to get one third of your broken leg, where they're like, yeah, I don't need any money. I'll get it on the other end. That's how those guys work. And it's very hard to find a personal injury lawyer. So these people that have been maimed or worse, the two incidences that I was involved with the lawyers, a year ago with the child and the bat. This was on video, an ESPN game where the bat went into the seats and you could see the mother turn and the bat connect with the baby. You would have thought the team would have said, "Of course, we're going to take care of you and your baby. You won't have to find an attorney." That wasn't the case. This baby grew up 6.5, 7 years later. I get a call from a lawyer's office. Why were they alone and feeling isolated for all those years? They could have been nurtured by the team immediately and had their billionaire doctors flown in to make sure that this baby was having everything. What happened happened, sure. Don't let it ever happen again, of course. Now, I don't know how long it took, Neil, for them to put the nets higher, but did they
Mhm.
do it right away? That's another story. 7 years later, there's no uniform system because we're all watching the playoffs in America, and you see that broken back coming over the seats like a boomerang. People can see on the website, T-Mobile. You'll see the bat come over the net like a boomerang. You even hear the announcer saying, "Yikes, look out," when they were showing it on replay. And did anyone see that Mr. Mayhem, that guy from Allstate? That's a billion times they show that commercial of the bat going over the fence in the park and breaking the window. So
Yeah.
there's no uniform commitment. It's crazy. This family, unfortunately, with the baby grew up nonverbal. Would have the baby been verbal? Yeah, right. And this family was on GoFundMe. Things were not good. This team isolated this family. They had to find an attorney. Maybe they didn't have the right doctors right away. That's a whole long story. Brendan and I are producing a book on that. I'm not saying much about it until we put the book out there. And then everyone in America is going to learn about this case and they're gonna be like, "Shame on baseball. They should have been in the corner of that family from immediately that happened," and it wasn't. So, to answer your question, baseball knows it's not a matter of if something gets crushed inside or outside the ballpark, because the assumption of risk also is outside the ballpark. The lady who got hit in Modesto, that one I'll talk about. She got hurt in spring of '23, summer of '23. I get called in the spring of '25. So, of course, you would have thought the owners of the Modesto club or the Mariners at the time were paying the salaries of the Modesto club, and the Mariners are worth billions of dollars. To give you a sense of how it goes, Neil, there's 30 major league teams, but they all have 4 affiliates. Some of them own the affiliates, some of them don't, but they pay the salaries of them. And why did this woman have to go get a lawyer? Why wouldn't the team say, "Ma'am, we were waiting to go in. We didn't even let you in because the gates weren't open yet, and you were just standing outside," and then you get hit in the head. The team, of course, should have said, "Of course, what happened to you is horrible. You will not need a lawyer. You will have access to all of our billionaire doctors." That wasn't the case. We learned that case was settled. People in Modesto or all of these places probably need to be walking around with some kind of umbrella, Neil. That's the
Yeah.
reality because they don't know 20 things are coming down every 4 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you are championing the cause, Jordan. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it at the full. And I think let's build a community around this, and
Great.
it will help us push this cause further. And
Definitely.
if everyone comes together, put their effort, we will be able to bring a change. That's my thought.
Oh, Neil, this is tremendous. Very, very great discussion.
Yeah, I want to talk about communicating risk. It's important to communicate risk in the digital world that you're very familiar with, Neil, with virtual scams, phishing, and how much information you put online, etc. How do we communicate those risks so that people take them seriously? And do you have any advice for the MLB about communicating risk properly so that it's not underestimated?
I mean, today I see Reels and TikTok and Snapchats being, unfortunately, one of the most effective mediums. So I would suggest, I mean, start with the schools. I mean, we have to educate kids, and we have to involve them in the campaign. This is real. See, someone like you got hurt. Okay, you are not hurt doesn't mean that you'll be safe if you go to next game. So if you can create a campaign like this, if you have a short reel, if they can create something, there are a lot of content creators who can help create awareness about these, that can spread the knowledge about the issue.
All right, Neil. Terrific stuff. We're very, very happy that you came to us today. And we welcome anyone who's maybe listening to join in and take this conversation where it needs to go. So thank you so much, everyone. Want to thank Brianna and Neil, and we'll do it again soon.